Welcome to Retro Local on WGTE, based upon the series Retro Report on PBS, which presents stories, current events, and news by looking at them through the lens of history. WGTE has produced 2 stories in this vein and selected 2 others from across the country to present to you in this Retro Local program. All of them share the notion that a better understanding of yesterday will help define our today and shape the lives of tomorrow. Our first story comes from right here at WGTE. 2 common aggravations for drivers is the price at the pump and the sight of orange construction barrels on the road. And if you really want to put a smile on a driver's face, mention a rise in the gas tax. While that may lead to an overall negative experience at the gas station, the reality is that the gas tax and those orange barrels are currently linked to the quality of our state and national roads. While the origins of the gas tax had a much different purpose, departments of transportation across the United States must confront many issues, including construction costs, inflation, and even an evolving transportation industry as it plans to rebuild the roads of yesterday into the roads of tomorrow.
We use roads every day, but many of us never consider how they are maintained or how construction is funded. In recent years, state and federal agencies have been working to address concerns regarding our aging infrastructure. In the 2017 Infrastructure Report Card, released by the American Society of Civil Engineers, U.S. roads were given a D grade due to congestion issues and the need for rehabilitation of the existing roads and bridges. In an effort to fix Ohio's aging infrastructure, Ohio's newly elected Governor Mike DeWine assembled an advisory committee to devise a solution to Ohio's crumbling roads.
The big item was the funding because of shortfall in the highway improvement funds that comes from gasoline tax. Our recommendation was that an increase was almost mandatory.
To understand why we would need to raise a gas tax, it is important to know a little bit about the history of gas taxes. The Revenue Act of 1932, which included the first gas tax, was enacted during the Hoover administration. The gas tax was initially intended to generate funds and relieve the deficit during the Great Depression. The gas tax was originally 1 cent a gallon and was increased later on. In the years following the Great Depression, the gas tax was repurposed as the need for an interstate highway system became apparent. In 1956, President Eisenhower signed into law the Federal Aid Highway Act, and a new highway trust fund was created to begin construction on a modern interstate system.
It was a big plan. It was very aggressive to create this large infrastructure system that spanned multiple states, that connected multiple states, and the planning and the funding and everything else had to line up. And you started to see a lot of these interstates start to expand and really help grow the economy.
Throughout the years, the state and federal gas taxes have been one of the primary methods of raising funds to keep up with rising construction costs and inflation. Until 2019, the last state gas tax increase in Ohio occurred in 2003 as part of Governor Bob Taft's 2003 Jobs and Progress Plan. This plan increased the gas tax by 6 cents a gallon. Back then, the buying power of the dollar was worth significantly less than it is today due to inflation, eroding the buying power of the dollar.
We have a new governor in the state of Ohio. The Governor DeWine started in January, and right out of the bat, his first major initiative was a transportation budget. He came out aggressively with a gas user fee increase, and that goes directly to our roads and bridges in the state of Ohio. With that transportation bill, ended up getting a 10.5 cent increase in gas user fee, and it's going to help a lot of projects throughout all of Ohio.
Despite DeWine's best efforts, due to inflation, future gas tax increases may be necessary to keep up with increasing construction costs. Without proper funding, the infrastructure in Ohio might continue to suffer.
From our perspective, you do the best you can. We try to do a major rehabilitation of a road. Typically, it's best to do it every 15 to 20 years. If you don't have the money and everything's getting eaten up by construction inflation, what you're trying to do is you take a look at something where you might do a major rehabilitation and you try to do a cheaper method that essentially extends your life. So you're basically trying to make things go longer and trying to stretch the dollar further. There comes at some point in time that it doesn't work anymore, and basically the whole road profile starts to fail.
What's been happening in the state of Ohio, and it has been happening at the federal level as well, is gasoline tax has not kept up, has not been indexed to inflation, and has not kept up with the expenses of maintaining roads. I think every economist would say that if we agree that we want this amount of gasoline tax to go to fund roads, then index it to inflation. If you don't, then in real dollars, essentially the amount that's going towards roads is decreasing every year.
Although indexing the gas tax may make sense today to fund road construction, it may not be a viable option in the future. Due to innovation and an increase in popularity of hybrid and electric vehicles, our reliance on petroleum to power vehicles may begin to decline.
Hybrids, electric vehicles, obviously that they're going to penetrate the market more and more as years progress. So that's something that actually this transportation budget took into account. By the time it went through the General Assembly, it includes a $200 registration fee on electric and a $100 registration fee on hybrid vehicles. So that kind of gets out ahead of the curve. It doesn't really equate to a whole lot of money now, but as the penetration continues to grow in the market with electric vehicles and hybrids, that's going to make a bigger difference and hopefully help adjust and account for the loss in revenue from the gas user fee.
Ohio's new gas tax is a short-term solution. With construction inflation and new technology, we must continue to look for alternative sources of funding to maintain and expand our infrastructure.
This next story comes from WITF in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and it focuses on subjects that can stir a great deal of thoughts and emotions in viewers, especially in a highly polarized and politicized environment. Just mentioning terms like climate change or global warming can cause some to exclaim hoax, or vice versa, that the end is near. Another hot-button topic to add to the mix is the concept of nuclear power. Some say that this source of electricity is safe and reliable. Others say it's extremely hazardous for people and the environment. As the discussion over nuclear power continues, this next segment revisits the story of 3 Mile Island, its impact on U.S. nuclear power development, and the future of the nation's energy production industry overall.
Mounting concerns about climate change are driving a new push to keep nuclear reactors open. The plants are the largest source of carbon-free electricity in the U.S., far outpacing renewable sources. Across the country, about a third of existing nuclear plants are either unprofitable or scheduled to close. Nuclear advocates are now pitching their carbon-free electricity as a solution to global warming, but critics don't think they should be classified as clean energy.
Virtually any time the subject of nuclear comes up, in a group of people who understand the problem and are looking for solutions, they end up in an argument. And it's because there really are good arguments in many different ways.
In Pennsylvania, the debate reminds people of 3 Mile Island. 40 years ago, it was the site of the most serious nuclear accident in U.S. history and sparked a backlash against the industry that halted its growth for decades. On March 28, 1979, the plant's Unit 2 reactor near Harrisburg partially melted down. Fearing for their safety, an estimated 80,000 people fled the region.
I took our marriage certificate and I took our children's birth certificates. I was concerned that if in the confusion things really got bad, that I could prove those were my children and that we could at least be together.
Joyce Karate was a young mother of 4 running a daycare out of her home a few miles from the plant.
My strongest memory is pulling out of this driveway and wondering if I would ever come back.
Public officials, even the governor, didn't seem to know what was going on.
We're getting conflicting reports too. What we're trying to do is give you our best estimate of what the accurate facts are.
After about a week, many people, including Karate, returned home. The plant eventually reopened, minus the one damaged reactor. That legacy left it hobbled. It means 3 Mile Island can't produce as much electricity as other facilities. Most have 2 working reactors.
There is only a single unit now at TMI, so it's one of these single unit plants that's having a hard time competing in the market.
3 Mile Island's Unit 1 reactor, which is owned by Exelon, closed this fall, 15 years before its operating license was to expire. Longtime anti-nuclear activist Eric Epstein sees the renewed attention on nuclear power as just a new marketing ploy for a failed technology.
I think a lot of environmentalists are making Faustian bargains and signing up to bail out nuclear without understanding that it's really going to do little to nothing to combat climate change. The time it takes to get a new nuclear power plant up and running, presuming you have the resources, is 10, 15 years. We don't have that kind of time. We've got to deal with climate change now.
In recent years, states including New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Ohio, and Connecticut have given billions of dollars to prop up their nuclear plants, recognizing them as a source of carbon-free power.
I want people to know that nuclear technology is safe, the tremendous contribution it makes to combating climate change because it emits no carbon, the tremendous economic role that it plays in the state and in the community.
The nuclear industry has faced economic headwinds from the rapid growth of natural gas plants and renewable sources like wind and solar.
It's meant some plants have become less competitive in the market. And that's true certainly for some nuclear power plants as well. Certainly not all nuclear power plants, but certainly some.
Nuclear energy advocates have been pushing Pennsylvania to look to the ways other states have recently moved to prop up their own unprofitable plants. But legislation to reclassify nuclear plants as clean energy stalled in Pennsylvania earlier this year. State Senator Ryan Aument, a sponsor of one of the nuclear subsidy bills, says it was hard to talk about the issue without people remembering the past.
When you mention 3 Mile Island, when you talk about nuclear energy, their mind immediately flashes back to the events of the spring of 1979. And without a doubt, that's been a real hurdle to overcome in terms of being able to educate folks on the benefits of the nuclear energy industry and, frankly, a tremendous record of safety that the industry has had over its existence in the United States.
For people who lived through the accident, like Joyce Karate, its legacy still looms large.
Nuclear power is an entity that if you run it 100% of the time, 100% perfect, we're okay. But nobody does anything 100% of the time, 100% perfect.
Her most vivid memory is evacuating, leaving behind her home and wondering if her life would ever be the same.
I find that really 40 years down the road, I'm still sitting on top of a plant that has all the waste, a plant that cannot sell its electricity, and there's still no real answers.
To this day, she avoids driving by the plant's cooling towers.
It's kind of like living with a giant in your neighborhood. You know it's there. You know it could cause you problems, but you live in an uneasy compromise.
Bringing it back to Toledo for this next story, Ohio has 2 incredible economic engines that benefit its citizens, the land and the lake. But what happens when these 2 resources come into conflict? Today, Northwest Ohio's farms, rural communities, and cities have enriched the lives of its residents, but they have also had an unintended negative impact on Lake Erie. Historically speaking, simply being a resident of the Lake Erie watershed could be considered part of the problem. However, when conflict gets termed as crisis, as it did in 2014, it acts as a catalyst for change. In the search for answers for today, it's easy to forget the lessons of the past. While many Ohioans from both the land and the lake have chosen to be a part of the solution, to truly understand the complexity of the problem, we must travel back in time and journey to the Great Black Swamp.
For over 50 years, Lake Erie has experienced an increase in severe algae blooms due to agricultural runoff and other factors. An algae bloom is an increase in cyanobacteria concentrations, otherwise known as blue-green algae, which can produce toxic microcystin.
Symptoms of the toxin from microcystin are vomiting, diarrhea, eye irritation, and rashes. Those are the short-term symptoms, but the long-term symptoms can be cancers, liver and kidney issues, death. Algal toxins have been around for literally billions of years, longer than there have been human beings.
On February 26, 2019, voters in Toledo voted to amend the Toledo City Charter and acknowledged that the Lake Erie ecosystem has legal rights to exist, flourish, and naturally evolve. The vote was a reaction to a water crisis in August 2014, when toxic algal blooms caused a do not drink alert for 400,000 residents. Before people settled in Northwest Ohio, it was a vast swampland known as the Great Black Swamp.
It was about a 1,500 square mile area from Lake Erie all the way over to Fort Wayne, Indiana. So a really large wetland complex. Around the 1800s, we cleared and drained the swamp to produce some of the best agricultural soils found anywhere in the world. But in doing so, we kind of went a little out of balance and we went a little far.
Traditionally, farmers use nitrogen and phosphorus to fertilize crops in an effort to replenish nutrients that have been absorbed by the previous crops. High phosphorus levels caused by runoff into ditches, rivers, and eventually into Lake Erie have contributed to the thriving toxic algae blooms.
In our shallow part of Lake Erie, it is only 20, 30 feet deep, so it's warm, full of organic matter, but when we add phosphorus to it and nitrogen from excess either manure or fertilizer or other processes, it will create a bumper crop of cyanobacteria.
Cyanobacteria, a blue-green algae that can produce toxic microcystin, can be found all over the United States. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, blooms have been implicated in both human and animal illness and death in at least 43 states. In August of 2016 alone, at least 19 states had public health advisories because of cyanobacteria.
This isn't an old problem that farmers have been burying their heads in the sand about. This is a new revelation to folks and a new problem that we need to deal with in terms of what are the repercussions and potentially even what are the good conservation practices of the past maybe having negative repercussions here. The farming community, we drink that water also. Most of these farmers are passing these acres down generation to generation. So if we're watching major significant nutrients flow off of our fields, it's not good for us either.
To prevent further damage to the lake, many solutions have been proposed. Our understanding of algae blooms and what causes them has changed.
Originally, the biggest concern was the phosphorus that was attached to the sediment. So we were really trying to keep the soil from coming off of the fields. We were very concerned with what was on top. Now the phosphorus that we're looking at is dissolved reactive phosphorus. So now we're concerned more about what's happening down deeper and what's happening in the subsurface.
Farmers and conservationists together are looking to the past for answers and possible solutions for the excess phosphorus runoff into Lake Erie. One such solution is currently being tested on a farm in Ohio by reinstating a wetland to act as a natural filtration system between a farm and a runoff ditch.
There's 32 species of trees and shrubs in this wetland planting. We based it off of some sites that are known to be good quality remnants of the historic Great Black Swamp. So the water that's coming off of the farm is actually running into the wetland, where the nutrients are being uptaken by all the trees and shrubs that we planted, rather than flowing into the ditch and eventually Lake Erie. So anything that we can do to intercept those nutrients before they get into the lake is going to help improve water quality.
Although wetland restoration is one attempt to prevent algae blooms, the Lake Erie Bill of Rights could potentially hold people and organizations accountable for their actions. It has been challenged every step of the way. Proponents of the Lake Erie Bill of Rights say that citizens are taking stewardship into their own hands.
Next up, bringing water to the desert. Not an easy task on its face. And add to that the fact that citizens of Nevada were dealt some pretty bad cards by an agreement made by some of its early leaders. Our last story comes from Vegas PBS, and it shows how a community came together and turned those historic bad cards into a winning hand.
Water Waste Investigator 7158. Time is now 6:52 a.m., 23rd of July. I have spray and flow.
In a city maybe better known for its excess, we're very serious about conservation, especially when it comes to water.
It is not causing runoff, but it's not efficient.
You might not know it flying over the opulent and lush Las Vegas Strip, nor our sprawling pool-lined suburbs.
We have a limited, finite amount of water to supply to our community. And about 70% of our state's entire population is right here in the Las Vegas Valley. And with that, we generate about 75% of our state's economic output. And we do all of that using only 5% of all of the water that's available within the state of Nevada.
It doesn't make sense. How is so much built on so little? To get to the answers, we need to go back in history.
In 1922, the 7 states that share the Colorado River divided up the waters of the river, and Nevada was left with 1.8% of the legal entitlements to the river.
300,000 acre feet a year out of 7.5 million.
We were the forgotten state. I mean, the joke was always that the Nevada state engineer at the time was drunk under a table somewhere in Santa Fe and forgot to come to the negotiations, right? And so at that time, 300,000 acre feet was considered to be an enormous amount of water.
When Las Vegas started as a town in 1905, the attraction was the underground water supply that bubbled up at what's now the Springs Preserve. And we managed to destroy it in about half a century. Nobody at the time anticipated that this area would end up with more than 2 million people.
From the founding of Las Vegas until 1971, the big spring complexes that existed stopped flowing from the overpumping of groundwater. So it was really necessary to access the Colorado River to reduce that over-reliance upon groundwater.
Once the groundwater dwindled, Hoover Dam gave Las Vegas an abundance of Colorado River water being stored behind the dam in Lake Mead. But then history damn near repeated itself.
Fast forward to 1983, the second intake is put in Lake Mead, and the Bureau of Reclamation declares at that point, Southern Nevada has enough water until 2025. Then the growth started becoming exponential. And we were seeing years in which the amount of water we were using was increasing by 17%. And all of a sudden, this water supply looked like it was going to evaporate in the 90s. So things started getting tense in Southern Nevada.
There is no water problem. There is a problem of attitude, culture, and history.
There was little, if any, communication between North Las Vegas, Henderson, and what was deemed the 800-pound gorilla, which was the Las Vegas Valley Water District. So the first order of business was to create peace. It allowed us to move ahead and create the Southern Nevada Water Authority. And it changed everything for Southern Nevada. Everything.
What changed was everyone working together on sound policy and innovative solutions.
We recycle and reuse all of the water that we use indoors. We treat that water to near drinking water standards, and then we return it back to Lake Mead. And for every gallon of treated wastewater that is returned to Lake Mead, we can take another gallon out and bring it into the valley as potable drinking water. That allows us to stretch our water resources.
Pragmatic leaders, sound policy and decision-making, and new infrastructure put us on the right track, just in time for a new historical challenge.
We had a 50-year resource plan that relied 100% on the Colorado River. Well, by 2002, Lake Mead was starting to drop dramatically.
The water levels just literally plunged. I think we reached a level where it was down 130 feet. That was what I consider to be a landmark year in terms of water conservation.
Conservation in Las Vegas became synonymous with community.
putting in time of day watering restrictions, and then annually having seasons where you watered 3 days a week. That really made a difference. Paying people to take their grass out. I mean, grass was coming out left and right. Golf courses and residential areas.
We utilize advanced metering technology to help monitor how much water is passing through individual customer meters and how much water is being used.
We can sit here proudly today and say we're one of the most resilient communities on the river because we adapted early.
Literally, we got 1.8% of what was allocated on the Colorado. But I feel like having that very small apportionment was a major catalyst at trying to get the 7 states together and collaborate.
I think the Las Vegas lesson to the rest of the country, and frankly the rest of the world, is you can have robust economic growth and use less water. But it's a matter of political will. It's a matter of the community being willing to make substantial investments in demand management to happen. And it's changing the culture.
Because it's not a Las Vegas or Nevada or even a regional problem anymore. And as water demand continues to increase, the hope is that our water story becomes your water story.
We hope that you've enjoyed these 4 presentations. Today, journalism continues to maintain and look for successful business models in the 21st century, where the 24-hour news cycle, clickbait, sound bites, opinion-based news, political polarization, and so much more have made it difficult to discern the truth. Hopefully, the stories that you watched in this program were able to slow things down and cut through some of the noise to give you a historic look at where some of these issues come from. In the end, though, it comes down to each of us as individual viewers to ask questions, observe, deliberate, ponder, check the facts of the fact-checkers, and if possible, weigh the effects of any of our own bias as we seek the truth. If all of us can take that duty upon ourselves, we'll become a more educated audience that is able to draw better conclusions and make more informed decisions, as all of us strive to build better lives for our families, our communities, our country, and ultimately the world. Thanks for watching Retro Local right here on WGTE.